session. Yeah, got it? Yes. So we define effective management of marine protected areas as the one which carry out by MPA managers with the collaboration of relevant stakeholders, addresses all the conservation challenges detected in the MPA from a socially and ecology equitable perspective, addresses those challenges using all the necessary human, technical and financial resources, is supported by the best available scientific information, produces verifiable conservation and social outcomes that foster community ownership, and also fully evaluate the result of its action, and finally, modifies its course of action according to the result of the evaluation process. So this is really the common vision and understanding during this workshop of the MPA management effectiveness. I don't know, I tried to, maybe I can do on the computer? Sorry, no? Yeah. Okay, maybe I have to, thank you. So what is about this session? The objective is to discuss networks experiences and their roles. And this is related to, this Mediterranean MPA roadmap that was discussed last year in Monaco. This is one of the key recommendations. And also to identify cooperation between networks in the Mediterranean and also beyond at more, let's say, transatlantic and even more global level, and to discuss and identify enabling factors for MPA networks effectiveness. This is also another key aspect. So this is let's say, the list of speakers of today. As an introduction, we will hear from Purificación Canals. That is, as all of you know, president of MedPAN. She also the coordinator of the EU Ocean Governance Project, and in particular, she coordinates the networks of MPA managers twinning. Then I will make a very brief presentation of MedPAN network. Then we will hear about Charles Besançon, EU Ocean Governance Project and Global Park Solution, about assessment of MPA networks effectiveness. In a first part of presentation, then, we will hear from different MPA networks, and first from Sarah Warring, that is online, and also Marta Prada from the UNEP's Caribbean Environment Program, with the Caribbean Marine Protected Area Network and Forum, CAMPAM. Then we will hear from Mitja Brisleit, sorry for the pronunciation, Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning Slovenia, that will speak about the network of MPAs in Adriatic Union. Then we will hear from Colonel Mamadou Sidibé, that is the president of RAMPAO, the Western Africa network of MPA. And finally, during this first session, we will hear from Maria Morgado from UN North America, that will speak about NAMPAN, the North America MPA network. And she will be online as well. We could have then a session discussion. And after the break, you will hear from different experience of other networks and also some specific tools and capacity building approaches. First from Alexa Sapoznikov, and that is working for the Patagonian Forum, and she's online. And Francis Top from EU Ocean Governance Project, Blue Pangolin Consulting, that will present you the Marine Mammal Management Toolkit, a tool for MPA managers and policymakers. And finally, Carol Ritchie from Europark Federation, that will present the Life Enable, that is a EU project working especially on online capacity building for Natura 2000 managers, not only marine, also terrestrial. And then we could have a session of discussion and main recommendation. So thanks to all our participants and speakers. And we will start with a short presentation of MedPAN. And I will be brief. So MedPAN is the network of MPA managers in the Mediterranean. So today, MedPAN gather more than 132 organizations that are members, meaning MPA managers, but also partners that are all the other organizations contributing to MPA management. Partner could be organization at local level, but also national or even Mediterranean level. At this time, MedPAN is all those members and partners are in 21 Mediterranean countries, and they represent around 190 managed MPAs. Because as you all know, in the Med, there are a lot more MPA, but with no dedicated MPA management body. So this is the map of where are our members and partners. So you see they are really distributed, and you can notice that depending on the governance of MP in different countries, in the Med could be different. In some countries, the management is really decentralized. In this case, like for example, in Italy, we have a lot of members of MedPAN because each entity that is managing can become member of MedPAN. You have other countries where let's say the management of MPAs is more centralized. In this case, you maybe one national institution become member, but finally they manage several MPAs. So another key aspect of MedPAN, about the fact that in our strategy, we really support at technical level MPA managers, but also at strategic level, more policy level, and financing support also to MPA. In our strategy, we really, those past years, let's say, we really support some national networks and also sub-regional networks. For example, as national networks of MPA managers, we supported the French MPA Forum, the Croatian new network of MPA managers, the Spanish network of MPA managers, and the emerging new Algerian national network. At sub-regional level, we support the Adriatic AdriaPAN network for several years. That is now going to an evolution to AdrianPAN for the Adriatic and Ionian Sea. We have been also involved recently in the Pelagos initiative that is not especially a network of MP managers, but let's say more a sub-regional initiative at the scale of the Pelagos sanctuary to support all the mobilization of the different actors, including, of course, the MP managers in the Pelagos, and to support the Pelagos agreement. So just to say that really the idea of MedPAN, that is a regional network of MP managers, is really to demultiply our, let's say, capacity to act and to have really some active national networks, sub-regional, also thematic networks. For example, we are involved in the Posidonia network at Mediterranean level. We are involved in the Mediterranean ecotourism network. So just to say that our idea is really to increase our, let's say, impact, not growing as MedPAN itself, but really to take support from different networks at other levels, in terms of capacity building, in terms of communication, in terms of strategy. Another aspect, and Purification Canals will go more in deep on that just after, it's about our connection with other networks of MP managers beyond the Mediterranean. So we started some years ago the transatlantic twinning of networks of MP managers, and you will hear today different let's say, networks that are involved for several years in this twinning. More recently, we had some exchanges also with Southeast Asia. I have to say that also there is a new network in Western Indian Ocean, WIAMPAN, and we are really willing to create connection with them. Recently also, we joined a larger alliance, the Global Alliance for Marine Protection, that was launched at the IUCN Congress last year in Marseille. It's an alliance of networks of MP managers and also conservation trust funds dedicated especially to MPAs and networks of trust funds. And the idea is really for this alliance to say there are the post-2020 targets to really reach 30% of MPA and other conservation measures by 2030. And the idea of this alliance is really to focus on the effectiveness of the MPA and the sustainable financing. So really this alliance is really to say, okay, there are some tools really operational to ensure there is this implementation of the post-2020 targets for MPAs. Yeah. So now we can move to with Mrs. Purificacio Canals to the EU Ocean Governance Project.
Thank you, Marie. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to continue with some of the topics that Marie already introduced, but from another perspective. So Marie did from the perspective of a regional network, and I'm going to do from the perspective of the coordination between those regional networks plus some national networks or national agencies that take care of the national systems of marine protected areas. So if we can have the presentation, that's great. If not, I'm going to just start to explain the. Yeah, it's done. Because I don't see it. No, it's not. Okay. Anyway, the EU Ocean Governance is a project of the European Commission, which is launched, well, managed from the foreign policy instrument. For those that don't know the structure of the European institutions, so they have different institutions, the Parliament, the Commission, and then the Commission have different directorates. Normally we work with the Directorate of Environment or the Cooperation or DG Mare, but that's very thematic. But then it's also an area which is the European External Action that has different subsections. And one of the sections is the Foreign Policy Instrument. It will be, let's say, the equivalent to a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in a country, but at the European level. So this Foreign Policy Instrument in 2016 launched a first project, a very unusual project because it was targeting marine protected areas management, and it was called Transatlantic MPA Network Project. And in this project, that was a 2 years project, the objective of the Commission was to establish connections between managers at different levels of across the Atlantic to identify areas of common activity to really promote those exchanges. So may I have a, yeah. So I'm just, yeah, okay. So the current project is the continuity of this first one that lasts from 2016 to 2017. It has like an extension of 1.5 years. And in 2020, we started the EU Ocean Governance Project that initially was a 3 years project, but at the end is 4 because of the pandemic, we had to ask for an extension. So I will not enter into the details. This is the structure. It's led by a consortium of companies and an NGO, which is GOPA, a German company with BNS, and WWF Indonesia. And the project has 4 components, and those components, the first one is targeting feasible anymore. So we transform this, and now what we do is enabling regional cooperation for marine protected areas in Southeast Asia. But what I think is important here to understand is that if you look at the components individually, each one could be a project. So what's the sense of having all of them together? So the sense is to show that when we talk about marine governance, there are many different levels of action. So the project is like an example of showing how we can connect different levels of action through an element, a common tool, which are marine protected areas. So through those marine protected areas, we are able to promote restoration of marine ecosystems in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. In Indonesia and Malaysia, we restore coral reefs, and in the Philippines, we restore mangroves. But it's not the surface or the technical aspects of the restoration what is more relevant. Obviously, it has to be effective, otherwise it doesn't make sense. But the focus is not on this, but the focus is in enabling the conditions to have the restoration with the involvement of the local and indigenous communities. So this is a governance level, the role of an MPA to coordinate with local actors to really do the restoration and to teach them to restore those ecosystems so they can continue doing this. So I can go more in deep later if you want on this aspect. It's not the main topic of the session, but I think it's important that you understand the connections and all this. The second component, as I said, is the networking, the exchanges between managers of networks across the Atlantic, and it includes the networks. And I'm going to do more a focus on this one. And then we connect and the regions. And then this is other component, the fourth one, It's more about supporting the implementation of those international policies in a regional scale. For instance, what we are doing in November, we will have a workshop in Puerto Princesa in the Philippines about how to establish new marine protected areas, especially taking advantage of the OECMs, the other effective area-based conservation measures, that is part of the Aichi Target 11, and is going to continue being as a target in the new global biodiversity framework and the locally managed marine areas. So it's a way to promote this establishment of MPA. So all those are different levels of governance. And as you will see right now, when I talk more about this second component, there is also connection between management and international policies. And this connection is mainly, not only, but mainly done through the networks of managers. So this is connecting with the role of a regional network, for instance, that we obviously support managers on the ground, but we also are the spokesperson of those managers in international conventions at the European level, Mediterranean level. So this is a little bit the background. I will not, since I explained, I will not enter in the slides because I think it's more interesting what comes later. But in the first project, it was also very interesting that we did the first scoping study in which we identify how many MPAs and where there were those MPAs in the Atlantic. It's the first time that was this kind of a study. We identified 14,500 MPA, marine and coastal protected areas in the Atlantic. We could not go more into the details, but more than 450 different ways of designation. So now we are updating this scoping study with many different information, such as the ones that are here. And one of the topics that is included is the existing networks of marine protected areas managers, because this is a substantial element, a key element for the capacity to manage those areas in the basin. Okay, sorry. The first project, the transatlantic, we had 3 levels of exchanges. 2 of them were thematic, targeting specific technical topics of interest for the managers. This was organized with the involvement of a lot of managers from the Atlantic in a first kickoff workshop we had in Brussels, in which some of you were there. And they were identified a list of topics of interest for managers to exchange. And we select 2 topics that are technical, which are coastal resilience and migratory species, and under the context of migratory species, we focalize on humpback whales for this first activity of exchanging, and how the managers do their activity to protect those migratory species from the management point of view. So you will have more details on this because my colleague Francis Stopp is here. He was the coordinator and still the coordinator of this part of the project. So he will focus and explain exactly what has been done for this issue. Yesterday, I don't know if you attended, there was another presentation from another colleague, Jean-Jacques Goussard, about the resilience. Coastal resilience is really a challenge for managers today. And it's a challenge that requires a lot of technical support, a lot of knowledge, and learning also from others is a good way to approach. So we create also this twinning, this partnership on coastal resilience. And the third one was a twinning, or let's say a partnership between networks of managers. So initially, those networks of managers were just 4 regional networks plus 2 national ones. Now we have many more actors involved on those exchanges. So here you have the list of in the first phase, we have, in addition of MedPAN that Marie already said, there was CAMPAM from the Caribbean. You will have the opportunity to listen at new CAMPAM activities in the next presentation. We had NAMPAM from North America and RAMPAO from West Africa they are also connected today virtually with the workshop. And 2 national agencies that support managers at national level. So during this time, we work with just these 6, but now we increase a number of new networks, especially we have OSPAR and HELCOM that are also connected with regional seas conventions. We have Red Parques in Latin America, the Marine and Coastal Group, the Patagonian Forum in the Southwest Atlantic, Red Gulf in the Gulf of Mexico, the CIMAR corridor this is not Atlantic. We go now to the Pacific. This corridor goes from Galapagos to Coco Island, from Ecuador, includes Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica. And then we have new national partners, for instance, the NOAA, that in fact NOAA is very connected with NAMPAM, the CONAMI Mexico, parts of Colombia, Dominican Republic, departments of Rocha and Océano Sanos in Uruguay, and recently also the government, the Ministry of Environment of Uruguay is also joining us. They are in the process of establishing 10% of marine protected areas. They have less than 1% now in the country. So they are now drafting this, and they are very interested in learning from other experiences to really address the management as soon as they create those new MPAs. And we have also national parks of Senegal, and you cannot see here, but it's also the community MPAs of Senegal that we will have also the opportunity to hear at Colonel Sidibe about their activity. So now there's a big number of networks. We start also including some networks in the Pacific, but we are also in connection with GUIOM-PAM in the Indian Ocean and with NEAM-PAM in the Yellow Sea. So what is the approach of those exchanges between networks? What's the sense? Because, okay, it's always nice to make friends, but this doesn't justify to spend European money. So that something has to be delivered here. There must be some value. When we start working, the first thing we did was to identify what were the common elements that make sense for us to be connected with other networks. And those common elements were put in 4 different axes. The first one, sharing information, knowledge, and tools. So that's what we are doing here. We can do also between networks, and from the networks might be download to the manager's level. Also building network capacity. So this is one of the topics that we have other presentation today about how to identify, how to measure the effectiveness of a network. Because it's easy to say, okay, let's organize a network, but how a network builds its capacity to deliver the services that is expected to be delivered. So this is something that we learn a lot each other by exchanging in the different contexts of the different regions, different countries. Also, this includes also this connection, regional, national. Maria already mentioned for the Mediterranean how MedPAN is supporting the national networks, but we think that this really is a key element if we really want to support the implementation of the international policies. So mainly this now IG target, and in the future, hopefully the 30 by 30, we need to really bring support to the country level because it's where the decisions are taken, but also from a regional perspective, putting everybody to cooperate. So this interaction was also part of the internal work in the twinning by working together with all those different networks, national and regional. Then we developed also this element of policy support, policy support or advocacy. In fact, the European Commission used more the word advocacy. We prefer to talk about policy support because the role of the networks is not to advocate in the classical manner, as for instance, the most environmental NGO are doing. It's more to help on this implementation. Help means that translating the objectives of the policies into ground action, but also passing the knowledge for this ground level in the future policies. So this is this intermediate role. And then financing, obviously, and financing means financing at 2 levels, financing the networking activity, but also financing the management of MPAs. So from this point of view, we had different levels of documents we developed, for instance, a strategy for sustainable financing of MPA networks. We had also in terms of policy support, we have been very active in international events, and then in the first one, so we are, for instance, now doing this desk study on networks effectiveness to really identify how we can be more effective, the networks that we are involved with, but also how we can support other networks that maybe today they even don't exist, or they just are starting now their existence. So here there are a few examples of the specific activities we do on knowledge exchange and sharing information. For instance, one of the things we do is obviously spread the work that the other two trainings are doing, because this is a clear example of a bottom-up approach, knowledge coming from the managers, shared by managers, and from here appear new tools for management. So these new tools for managers, you will see later the example of for marine mammals. So we also spread this work in our activity through other networks. But for instance, we are now also exploring how the networks work with another group of migratory species that are the marine turtles. Marine turtles, you have seen different examples of the MedPAN activity with the working group on marine turtles. There are other networks that also work, also connecting with networks that maybe are not necessarily of managers, but people that is very concerned and very active on this conservation for this species. And there will be also an additional activity, in this case from the marine mammals twinning, to adapt the tool they develop for marine mammals to marine turtles. So there's a lot of internal also connection between the different elements. So those are just few examples for this technical level, but it's also very important the support that this partnership is giving to the different networks. Obviously, MedPAN receives some support. MedPAN also contributes to the joint activity of the partnership. But for instance, now we are exploring how we can provide better support to the specific network in West Africa, Rampao. They are in a moment of reshaping their structures, their way of working, and they ask us to support them in this strengthening of the network. So those are different ways of operating depending on the needs and the context of each of the networks. Sometimes it's just participating in events. For instance, up there you have an example with the Patagonian Forum participating in their activities. But for instance, I forget to say, because my presentation is a little bit old, but when we talk about sharing knowledge and tools and building capacity, we just finalized a few weeks ago a specific training on management effectiveness, in which 21 managers from different MPAs from the Antarctica till the Mediterranean on Spanish-speaker countries, they have been following this specific training that has been implemented by the Patagonian Forum, because they have a specific school for managers, and they already had prepared all the program for this training. And this training has been very interesting for the managers. And now they will be, in the coming year, until the end of the ocean governance, they will be applying the learnings on how to develop their own management effectiveness tools to monitor this effectiveness. They will be applying specifically in all those different MPAs, and this will provide also a lot of different perspective about management effectiveness when you use the same kind of tools, but in different ecosystems, in different countries, in different socioeconomic contexts. So this is part of this dimension of supporting to build capacity of the networks, but also the managers. And we are planning new capacity building activities in English. And also, well, for the French, we will be focusing especially on supporting Rampao, because obviously the language is a limitation. I'm sure that all of you have experiences on how difficult it is to connect people when we talk different languages, so it's always a challenge. So here are just a few examples of the policy support activity in the past. We were very active at Impact 4, and now we are planning to be even more active at Impact 5. So this is going to be a great opportunity to show the value of networking and the value of supporting those connections between managers at all those different levels. So maybe we can have, during the debate, more time to talk about what we are planning for Impact 5, and hopefully you can also take advantage of it. We were also present at the UN Ocean Conference in New York in 2017, but also this year in Lisbon. And in both cases, we deliver speeches in the plenary and a statement on behalf of all the networks, and stressing to the countries their crucial importance to invest on management of MPAs. It's not just to put 10%, 30% in a map, but to properly manage it. So this is part of this policy support activity. And Marie already talked about this. In our fundraising strategy, we identified different ways that could serve to us to mobilize resources for networking and for MPA management. And one of the things we identified that it will be maybe interesting to not just look inside the managers' networks, but also other structures that currently they are already supporting MPAs, they are already supporting marine protection, such as the conservation trust funds and the networks of conservation trust funds. So we decided to explore opportunities with them about working together. And from these first contacts and exchanges, we realized that there was a huge opportunity, and we have a very nice example. I think it has been presented in other moments, but yeah, in Friday you will have a specific presentation of this new Jeff project of MedPAN and the MedPAN. And this is an example on how a network of managers and a conservation trust fund can join forces to mobilize resources from a big donor, like as is the case of the Jeff, to act at two levels. By one side, the Conservation Trust Fund will capitalize 4 of the 5 millions for investment and bringing direct support to MPA management. And there is another $1 million in the project that goes to MedPAN for capacity building of the managers in the same region. So this is just a pilot project that shows that this kind of cooperation may be useful at other dimensions, because here we join two kind of strengths: the strength of being very reliable in terms of management of the money, which is what a conservation trust fund is specialized in, managing budgets and money. But then there is also the credibility of the network of managers in the identification of the key MPAs and supporting, identifying what is needed for the managers in terms of building capacity, and also the monitoring of the actions on the ground. So this combination can really be very interesting for donors, because just in one pack they guarantee a good use of the funds. And now the idea is through this alliance to go deeper on this or explore other opportunities for funds together. And obviously, I already said that we don't stay only in the Atlantic, because there is only one ocean. And in fact, the challenges are the same. In every case, in every MPA, in every regional dimension or national dimension, there are specificities. That's true. And we need to not only accept, acknowledge that they are there and work with this diversity of situations, but at the same time, there are a lot of huge common challenges everywhere. They are common. So that means that, especially for this policy support or influencing policies, it's very interesting to work together, as well as for mobilizing resources from big donors. So we don't restrict our action to the Mediterranean from MedPAN. We don't restrict the action in the Atlantic, and we connect when there are other networks interested in exchanging. We connect as well with them in the Indian Ocean, in the Yellow Sea. And recently, we had the opportunity through the component 3 of the Ocean Governance Project. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in Kota Kinabalu in Malaysia, in Borneo, organizing a learning exchange. The first learning exchange between the Atlantic and Southeast Asia was happening virtually, because it was not possible to travel. But the second one was physical. We were physically there. And it was a great moment to really exchange with different actors. There were, from my point of view, unfortunately, not a lot of managers, but it shows also that mobilizing managers is not always easy when there is not an habit, when there is not a networking activity permanent in the region. But there were few of them, and there were also a number of officials of different countries, with people that are responsible of marine protected areas, regional institutions that support MPAs, and we were some of the partners of the partnership of networks were also there, and also some MPAs that collaborate with the other twinnings on resilience especially. So we were there, and we had the opportunity during 3 days, including the field visit, to exchange some different experiences. And it was obvious there is that networking and allowing the managers to connect and to explore other experiences of other people is really very, very important. And for instance, this was co-organized with the Coral Triangle Initiative, which is a regional institution in Southeast Asia that targets especially coral reefs, but they work in MPAs that have also other ecosystems. They have a marine protected area working group, and now they are thinking in the possibility to create themselves a network or to enable networking activity through this working group. So the idea was to show them that there is room and that the other networks, we can support this networking activity there, and through the knowledge and effectiveness of networks, this will be even easier. And we are also working closely with another regional institution, which is the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and we collaborate with them for the organization of this workshop we are planning now in November, about the establishment of new marine protected areas. So this is a resume. I can go more in deep, but the idea behind this regarding the networks is to move towards the connection of more and more networks and support the creation and the development of networks of managers, because certainly this is a dimension of the conservation of nature that is almost unknown for a large majority of people working on nature conservation. So if you think on politicians and the general public, we are even more unknown. So certainly it deserves a lot of focus, and it deserves a lot of investment, because if we really think that this 30 by 30 target is going to be approved in December, or even if it's less, let's say 2025, this is going to be still a big challenge from now to 2030, in 7 years, to establish this new level of MPAs, and even more challenge to manage. So a lot of technical support is going to be needed. A lot of capacity building for new managers is going to be needed. So you cannot send any single manager back to the university to do a master's degree on management of MPAs. So we need to address this in a more pragmatic manner, and probably networking, exchanges, specific trainings for them may be a good tool to be offered also to the countries. So we will be there in the COP in Montreal in December. The idea is also to present this contribution of the networks and the value at all those different dimensions of exchanges, from the very grown activity and working with the communities, restoring, developing specific tools for management, and the more political action of being the voice of the managers at those international levels. So I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uri. And now we will continue this introduction with Mr. Charles Besançon from the EU Ocean Governance Projects and Global Park Solution. Charles, can you unmute?
Hi, Marie.
Hello, Charles.
So I'm ready. I have a presentation. So I'll just start talking while you're loading that up. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you very well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning from me here in Montana, where it's still quite early. It's always difficult to follow Uri after her presentation, because there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of content, and it's difficult to follow that level of engagement that she has. So I'm going to talk about guidelines, best practices, and evaluation of effectiveness of marine protected area manager networks. And I had the pleasure of unveiling 2 documents that I've worked on, 2 projects that I've worked on this year. 2 weeks ago, when I was with Puri and Marie and several others of you who are there in the room and online, when we were in Kota Kinabalu in Borneo in Malaysia. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I am the Director of Global Park Solutions, but I'm also a member of the EU Oceans Governance team and a consultant. And so I'm working on numerous projects over the last few years related to MPA manager networks. This year, I will talk about two of those projects because they're very, very much related to each other. And the first one on the left of the screen is the Interreg Mediterranean MPA Networks project. And this was to provide guidelines and best practices for MPA manager networks. And on the right side, the EU Ocean Governance Project had a sub-project called Evaluation Framework for Marine Protected Area Manager Networks. So these two projects had a great amount of overlap. So I was able to do them both essentially at the same time. And a lot of it involved interviews with network managers. So here's a list of 13 networks that were either interviewed or become part of these two overlapping projects. And just to differentiate them, on the left is the guidelines and best practices. And then on the right is the evaluation framework. And so these take a different view through a different lens of MPA manager networks. And when I started this work, I thought, well, I'll just Google evaluation frameworks and guidelines for manager networks. And there's probably something useful that I can find that I can adapt to this situation. And it turns out there really wasn't, because there's frameworks for evaluating marine protected areas. We have the management effectiveness tracking tool, there's RAPAM, there's other evaluation frameworks. We don't have evaluation frameworks for networks. It's quite a different situation. And the same thing with best practices for networks. If you look through the literature on this, you'll find very little written in the conservation context. You'll find most of the scientific information or the studies done on this in the sector of health. So I took what I could find and from other sectors, and in particular, I looked at the organizational development literature and systems theory, and had to come up with my own frameworks. So if you click the slide, we'll start with the best practice guidelines. And the idea here is that we're looking at how to measure the effectiveness of networks, what frameworks, what dimensions of effectiveness, what questions to ask. And this really presents a framework for self-evaluation. And I'll show this in a few more slides. Can you click the slide? Okay, so the best practice guidelines. Here we're looking at various functions of what networks do. And this came from the interviews that we did. So we look at the network establishment, sustainment, and maturation. So this first image on the top left, what phase is your network in? Are you just a brand new network? Are you at a stage where you exist and now you're trying to still maintain the resources that you need to do your work? Or are you more of a mature MPA manager network and you have a stable and consistent source of funding? So I'm not going to go into the detail on the best practice guidelines because I would bore you with 50 slides. So instead, when this presentation is over, I can post a link to the best practice guidelines. There's a non-formatted version of this that's been posted on the MedPAN website, and I can post a link to that, and you can go into the detail because there is quite a lot of detail under these various characteristics of networks. So we look at network establishment, sustainment, and maturation, considering the purpose, goals, and objectives, among other things, of those networks. We look at governance, how are decisions made, and we look at examples from the various networks that were interviewed. We look at components of leadership, including who is on the leadership board of the network, including NGOs and government institutions. We look at communication and management. Is it formal? Is it informal? You know, how does the network communicate internally and externally, and how does it coordinate some of its management? And then, of course, the important topic of financing and fundraising. And the best practice guidelines advocates for a very strategic approach to that, doing business planning and aligning your fundraising strategy with regional and international frameworks, so that when there is a change to those international frameworks, the network is ready to quickly mobilize itself to try to receive some of those funds. We also looked at how networks can help to navigate political instability and create stability where there may be none at a political level by maintaining coordination at the more technical level, if that's all that's possible given the political situation. And then there's a more general description of how MPA manager networks promote resilience across the seascape. Okay, and then next slide, please. So the other document was this evaluation framework that I mentioned briefly. And this is really a self-evaluation framework. So the idea is that a manager network could use this to consider its own functions and how it operates, and go through a series of questions which are in this draft document. It's not published yet. I'm still finishing this up. But the framework will essentially look the same, I think, in the final version right here. So it's a self-evaluation framework. You could use this to look at how your network operates and try to improve on certain functions that are important. And not all of these are important for every network. But these are the elements, the dimensions that were told to us through all of the interviews that we did. These were the way it kind of all broke out. And so there are two enabling conditions that are important for a network to be effective. One is the legal and administrative arrangements. So how is it situated in law and physically? Is it just a project of an organization, or is it an institution with a bank account that's legally established, legally recognized? So these are important elements. And then it needs to have sustainable finance. It's kind of an enabling condition for it to be effective. I think that one makes pretty much sense. And then there are these different dimensions that are in the inner circle here in this evaluation framework. Clarity of purpose. So how well does the network communicate what it exists for? What's its vision, its goals, its objectives, and how easy is it to find those things through the communication materials that the network creates? Can you go to a web page and find all this out, or is it hidden somewhere? And then we talk about good governance, and I'll have a slide on this after, so I'll skip it for now. Provide leadership. And so how is the network providing leadership to the MPA managers in the network and to the partners? Communication, similar to the best practice guidelines. So this looking at informal and formal communication. And then some networks exist to build capacity, not all. Some of them do. So we looked at, there's a series of questions in this document about how your network is organizing itself to help build that capacity. And then the very important topic of monitoring. So is your network monitoring the members in the network? Is it monitoring the status of the marine protected areas in the region? And is it monitoring its own activities as it operates day to day? So those are all the kind of different dimensions we looked at in the evaluation framework. And just as an example, and I'm almost done, click the slide, please. So if we look at good governance, this is one of the dimensions, and this is what you'll find in the final version of the document once it's published, which should be very soon. There's the section on good governance starts with a description of what is governance. And so governance, according to the United Nations, is the process of decision-making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. So that's what governance is, but good governance has 8 major characteristics. It's participatory, consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. So given that, and given each of the dimensions of MPA manager network effectiveness, there's a series of self-evaluation questions that you would ask related to this topic. So on the good governance topic, the evaluation questions are: first, is there a clear decision-making process for your network? Was there consultation with network members and partners in this decision-making structure? Does the process include a written constitution or charter with a description of the network's functions? Are decisions that are made periodically recorded and used to amend the charter, constitution, or other document used to record how decisions are taken? And then last, related to the principles of good governance according to the UN, are the principles of good governance participatory, consensus-oriented, etc., used as the basis for decisions taken by the network? So when we had a discussion on this topic in Malaysia 2 weeks ago, we had many networks represented, and it was clear that many of the networks had considered several of the other dimensions, but this particular one was a bit new. All of the principles of good governance, there was not a lot of examples of networks that had actually followed this and included this in their governance structure. So that was eye-opening and quite important, I think, for some networks. So this is just to give you a flavor of what you will find in the evaluation framework document once it's created, and that should be in the next week or two when it'll be finalized. And as I mentioned, the best practice guidelines is finished, and we'll post that into the chat on here, and hopefully Marie and Puri can make that available, or Carol there in the meeting that you're in. So with that, I say, next slide, please. Thank you very much. Merci. And
thank
voilà.
you. Thank you very, very much, Charles, and very sorry also for the time. I mean, I know you have to wake up early to make this presentation, but really to say also to the audience that it's a great work, and it's really a start, and I'm sure it will help a lot of network, those guidelines, and also this framework for assessment of the effectiveness of network. So thank you very much, Charles. And so I see the timing, and now we can go to the presentation from the Caribbean. So I invite Marta Prada, that is in the room, and Sarah Warring, that is online, to deliver their presentation about CAMPAM, so the Caribbean MPA Network and Forum. Well, you can, as you want. Can you put? And Sarah, you can hear us?
Yes, thank you. Can you also hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon also from my side. Actually, good evening here in South Korea. I'm actually attending a conference, so it's 10:30 p.m. now almost. But it's a pleasure to be here nonetheless. If you're good, I'll start. I can't see anyone right now, but Let me know if I should go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
All right. Thanks a lot. Before I start, actually, I would like to thank the MedPAN Secretariat for inviting us in the first place. So my name is Sarah Boring. I'm the Associate Program Officer with the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat, which is the regional SEAS program for the wider Caribbean region. And together with my colleague, our consultant, Martha Prada, who I'm very happy was able to join you physically, we will present the case study of the Caribbean Marine Protected Area Network and Forum, in short, CAMPAM. So most of you will actually know the Mediterranean Action Plan or Barcelona Convention, I believe, but just for your background, the Cartagena Convention is actually the only regional legally binding agreement for the protection and development of the marine environment in the wider Caribbean region. It entered into force in 1986. It has been ratified by 26 out of 28 countries thus far and is supported by 3 technical protocols. So we have one on oil spills, one on specially protected areas and wildlife, the SPOR protocol, and then one on the pollution from land-based sources and activities. The contracting parties to the Cartagena Convention are supported in implementing the convention and its protocols by 4 specialized regional activity centers. The RAC for the SPOR protocol, for example, is based in Guadeloupe, and I'm also very glad to welcome our colleague Christophe Blasi online. Next slide, please. So the SPOR protocol actually provides the only regional legal framework for marine biodiversity conservation in the region. And it has been ratified by 18 countries, as you can see on the map on the left-hand side. The use of MPAs as a conservation and management tool is actually a key strategy of the SPOR protocol, which explicitly recognizes also the need for effective management and the need for supporting and providing enabling conditions to facilitate this. So this would also include qualified managers and technical personnel. So in recognition of this, the Caribbean Marine Protected Area Management Network and Forum, CAMPAM, was formed in 1997, which essentially is a network of marine protected area professionals and practitioners. The aim of CAMPAM was to support the mandate of the SPOR protocol by addressing some capacity limitations in Caribbean MPAs, by bringing together an inclusive network to kind of exchange ideas and lessons learned in the region. Us as the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, we have actually supported CAMPAM activities technically, administratively, and also financially. And this was in compliance with several articles under the SPOR protocol, which are illustrated on the right. So for example, we have the need to facilitate the exchange of scientific and technical information, and also, for example, include activities that provide training of scientific, technical, management personnel. Next slide, please. So over the last decades, CAMPAM actually developed widely recognized programs and initiatives and really achieved quite a wide range of successes. So for example, it implemented a training of trainers program with 15 different multilingual courses. For example, it also hosted 19 MPA sessions at the annual meeting of the Global Caribbean Fisheries Institute, which essentially covered various topics from MPA management to biodiversity, ecological processes, and conservation strategies, and many more. CAMPAM also provided technical support in the design, selection, and monitoring of the implementation of small grants that promoted exchanges and the sharing of best practices in support of a number of other region-wide projects. Then it also, as you can see in the list, created a database that contains detailed information of more than 1,000 MPAs in the region. The list really is ongoing. And based on the above, on these accomplishments, CAMPAM really demonstrated its effectiveness in successfully building partnerships and networking for over 2 decades. Next slide, please. And despite its successes, CAMPAM also faced some challenges, for example, in regards to the funding, the work plan, governance, and also human resources. So actually much of the enabling conditions that our colleague here from the Global Park Solutions was actually just talking about. So that was very interesting, thank you. And essentially then at the 6th Scientific Technical Advisory Committee meeting in 2014, it was recommended by our technical experts from the contracting parties to assess the impact of CAMPAM activities on MPA's management effectiveness and also need for updating its strategic work plan. It was then further recommended at the 10th SPOR Conference of Parties to assess the role of CAMPAM on MPA management effectiveness. So in response to these recommendations, we actually developed 2 performance assessments, the first one in 2016 and another one in 2021. And at the most recent SPOR-STAG, the contracting parties actually also requested that our protected areas working group in collaboration with ourselves and also the Regional Activity Center of SPOR that I was just referring to would assess the feasibility of implementing the recommendations that were actually presented in these reports and kind of provide different options on the way forward of CAMPAM. So Martha, who is with you today, recently actually developed these options paper for essentially the, let's say, resuscitation of CAMPAM and the way forward. And she will now provide an overview of the preliminary findings of options paper, which will also be presented at our next SPOR STAG in the SPOR Conference of Parties. And we look forward to receiving some expert insight from you based on your own experiences with MPA networks and fora. Martha, over to you. I'm sorry, I promised to take just 3 minutes, but please go ahead.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. And I'd like first to express my appreciation for the opportunity to be here in this forum and present all this CAMPAM connectivity with the MedPAN and other activities. And what I want to highlight now is that actually within the last 5 years, CAMPAM has been evaluated twice. And it is really known throughout the region. CAMPAM for its most appreciated values, which consist mainly in the recognition of the capacity building and improvement on MPA management throughout the region. But it also appreciated the significant degree of information sharing and professional exchanges throughout the entire region on different at the capabilities to reach different cultures across the geopolitical spectrum, to work nationally, regionally, and even at the global scale, and some activities with MedPAN too. So for all of that, CAMPAM has been a really strong network within the last 2 decades. But also CAMPAM has suffered from other weaknesses. So perhaps the desire to keep the network informal has led to the weakness in governance, and the engagement for MPA manager overall can be reduced through time. And also this problem with not having enough staff for handling all the different activities, and that is related to the lack of funding and the great dependence on a single source of funding for internal from the Cartagena Convention Secretariat. So it is a combination of CAMPAN not being able to concentrate itself in having the enough personnel to create the necessary funding to fulfill all objectives. And also lately, the different trainings, including the Trainer of Trainers course, which is one of the major programs for CAMPAN, is being considered that it requires perhaps a little bit or more bottom-up approach to programming, and also be able to integrate the new commitments on conservation and challenges that climate change has imposed on to the managing of the coastal and marine resources. And for that, we need perhaps a more clear relationship between the CAMPAN itself and the SPO protocols. So that's why is where this study, the work I am doing right now, is being conducted. So from the two assessments I have mentioned before, there were like 17 different recommendations how CAMPAN can be improved. And from that, we have compiled and restructured into 3 main recommendations for high-level decisions. So recommendation 1 is dealing more to the governance structure of the network. So it is really an important issue to consider how to reactivate, how the membership can be, how the governance structure should be, or how to work on the longer-term partnerships. So recommendation 2 is also dealing with the aspect of financial sustainability. Having the previous experience in the lack of funding and highly dependence on relatively few sources of funding, now there is a need to really establish the level of basic and ideal funding for a good operation of the network, and also to find ways, strategies, or mechanisms to diversify funding through time and making that opportunities more sustained on the longer term. And recommendation 3 basically is dealing with the structuring of multi-year work plan. In that work plan that is expected to be built from the bottom-up approach in a participative way, at least 5 main points are expected to be analyzed and agree with. So that will require, for instance, as was mentioned in previous presentation, the need for self-assessments from the MPA manager. So different countries have different needs and have different expertise and different requirements. So we need to be updated the MPA self-assessment. The last one was conducted in 2011, and that ended up in the creation of a new Caribbean partnership that is now called MPA Connect. But there is a need to actually continue doing that and work more towards reestablishing and reactivating CAMPAN as a major leading network on this initiative. So also need to integrate different commitments from the SPO parties. So it's a call for the parties of the protocol to be more involved in guidance, in technical and political advisory too, and diversify the education. So we need to couple with the climate change effectiveness, impacts, and potential strategies to counteract that. But in addition, to deal with different more regional and global problems like mass mortality from different marine species. So in the Caribbean, for instance, the coral reef are dying in an impressive rate. And so here in MedPAN, there are other species that are also dying. So maybe the entire world is connected from different challenges that perhaps the common collaboration can be a really successful network. So it needs to improve engagement, advocacy, and communication in different languages. The Caribbean as well as the MedPAN region, we have more than 12 languages spoken. If you don't count the really indigenous ones, so we can go up to more than 20 or something. So it is really a challenge, but we need to keep these communications in a way that everybody is following up the thing that we like to say. So for each of the recommendations, 2 or 3 major outcomes are being proposed. And for implementation of those major outcomes, 3 different options are being presented. I'm not going to go through all the details because it will take a lot of time, but just want to highlight here that the options are moving further away from a more internal solution to a kind of mixed solution with the combination of the countries, the Cartagena Convention Secretariat and other partnerships, or completely structuring of a separate network. So there is several alternatives, and that's why it's really important for us to be able to present these alternatives. Here are the outcomes for this financial sustainability. And these are the ones for the multi-year program. So what is important really to have in mind is that this is an ongoing process, that this is a living document, that we are sharing these thoughts and ideas later on at the SPOSTAC and the COP that is expected to take place early next year, but also they have the opportunity to share it with you. The presentation, I guess, will be available for everybody. So we really will appreciate any comments or suggestions you may have on the specifics on that. And the consultancy went all the way to start proposing alternatives for short, medium, and longer term implementation. So this is about implementing recommendations, which, as you may know, is a really difficult thing to do, but it's a thing that we must complete. So I guess that's all that I have to say for now, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Marta. It's really an exciting moment for CAMPAM. I'm really happy because we collaborate a lot with CAMPAM for 10 years. Yes. And it's really, yeah, it will be a challenging period, but also exciting. And it made me think before MedPAN was created as an organization, there was this kind of study with several options, and it's really, really interesting. So Thank you for sharing. And I guess during this session, we can also exchange. And I look at the timing, because now normally it's the coffee break. So maybe we can break a little bit and come back at 4, 4 sharp, because then we will have this boat to go for the dinner that leave at 6, so we cannot be late. And okay, so let's take a little break, and we come back at 4 and we start again. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start again. Hello, welcome back. Oui. So we will start again. Normally the presentation was from Mitja Brislic from Ministry of Environment of Slovenia, but as sick. So we invite Martina Ervad, that is working for Brioni National Park, to make a short presentation on this Croatian network of MPA managers. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you. Hello. I'm really glad to be here today. I apologize, I don't have a proper presentation, but it was not intended to be one on Croatia. However, I will step in because I would like to share a few information with you about CROMPA, the Croatian Network of Marine Protected Areas. The time is limited, so I'll be just brief. So what is the status of protection of the marine environment in Croatia? So we are in the Adriatic Sea, the East Coast. And if we take a look at the pictures of the protected areas in Croatia, we can see that the sea is blue in different sides. We have 17 designated protected areas under the national framework. However, we have also a vast Natura 2000 network that comprise 247 Natura 2000 sites, which makes 16% of the coastal sea. And with the exclusive ecological zone, it makes around 9% of protection. And there is also one part of the sea that is protected under fishery regulation. It makes some 12%. Who managed that? 15 institutions of different level. We are national institutions, so nature park and national parks, 7 regional public institutions, and 2 local institutions. Okay. Can we move? Oh, sorry. Okay. During COVID, there was one wonderful project led by MedPAN named Interreg Med Project MPA Networks. And we weren't discouraged that it was lockdown, it was impossible to gather. We really wanted to gather, and we were following the epidemiological situation and try to find gaps during lockdowns. And we gathered the first time in September of 2020, so it was really recently, in Šibenik, in the heart of Dalmatia. And I wanted to point out this was really a bottom-up approach. We really encourage everybody to come to engage. We really felt as the lead of this initiative that we are there only to coordinate and to hear, to listen. And the result was that after many online sessions, we have different technical exchanges. We gather in Brijuni, so in our park, 1 year later, well, even less than 1 year later. It was a night gang. I have to say it was during the epidemiological restrictions, so we just took out our mask for a few minutes. And we also signed a memorandum of cooperation. So all the Croatian institutions that manage the protected areas, the 15 on us, and we continue the collaboration. We have different technical trainings together. We exchange information, and now we are moving toward to have some project proposal developed together. And we are thinking of formalizing our status. If you would like to have more information, please don't hesitate to contact me. I would be really happy to give you more info on CROMPA. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Martina. I think it's really interesting to see this experience of a national network that was created and that will now really grow and hopefully be sustainable. And also maybe we can mention that we signed an MOU between MedPAN and CROMPA to really look at this complementarity that Puri mentioned at the beginning between a regional and a national network. So now we will continue with Colonel Mamadou Sidibé, that is the president of RAMPAO, the Western Africa Network of MPA Managers. Colonel, bonjour. Est-ce que vous nous entendez?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Mais peut-être vous pouvez vous partager la présentation.
OK.
Et ravi de vous avoir en ligne.
Merci.
Ah, voilà.
En principe, j'avais demandé juste à Marie-Suzanne de pouvoir faire cette présentation, d'autant plus que je devrais aller juste à l'Assemblée nationale. Mais quand même, je vais juste faire ça très rapidement.
Merci beaucoup.
Je suis très content vraiment de vous revoir et de discuter avec vous et de partager juste nos maigres connaissances par rapport à ce qui se passe au niveau du Rampao. Donc, le Rampao, c'est un réseau qui regroupe l'ensemble des aires marines protégées, donc juste au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Donc, il regroupe 8 pays pour le moment, mais c'est en extension. Donc, nous avons la Mauritanie qui ne fait pas partie un peu de la CEDEAO, mais quand même, nous continuons notre extension vers la CEDEAO, globalement. Donc, ceux qui sont vraiment sur la partie marine. Il y a 48 aires marines protégées. Donc, sur les 16 aires marines protégées, nous avons des aires marines protégées nationales, donc où il y a des parcs nationaux, des parcs naturels. Mais aussi, nous avons 28 aires marines donc, communautaires protégées, qui sont vraiment des zones marines qui sont gérées par les populations, quoi. Et une diversité vraiment de paysages, quoi. OK, on peut continuer, s'il vous plaît. Slide. L'organisation, dans l'organisation, nous avons une forme de gouvernance qui nous permet aujourd'hui de pouvoir avoir plusieurs secteurs. Donc, nous avons la partie donc, étatique, donc, où vraiment c'est les conservateurs, c'est les gestionnaires donc, des réseaux qui sont dans ce collège-là. Et dans un autre collège, nous avons le collège vraiment des communautés. Et c'est ça qui nous permet aujourd'hui de pouvoir ranger les communautés, l'État et tout ça dans une même gouvernance pour pouvoir partager les différentes expériences entre nous. Slide. Et ça nous permet d'avoir non seulement donc, une certaine diversité d'approches au niveau local, mais au niveau national, mais aussi tout au niveau régional. Et c'est ce qui permet, par exemple, aux différents donc, AMP de pouvoir se partager vraiment les expériences entre eux, mais les pratiques. Parce que nous considérons aujourd'hui que l'océan, c'est un seul monde, et dans ce seul monde-là, il y a une diversité de pratiques, et il faut arriver à harmoniser cette diversité de pratiques tout en gardant la spécificité de tout un chacun. Donc, c'est dans ce cadre-là que vraiment le Rampao agit pour permettre à tout un chacun de trouver son compte. Avec beaucoup de partenaires, donc tels que l'UCN, le PRCM, WF et FEBA. OK? Slide. Nous pouvons parler un peu du cas d'étude. Donc, si nous prenons le cas d'étude du Sénégal, donc le Sénégal, donc, qui a connu vraiment les AMP bien longtemps, mais a vraiment mis ça en exergue, mis ça en œuvre. Vraiment, ce n'est qu'à partir du congrès de 2003, donc où il y a eu la création de 5 aires marines communautaires protégées, mais qui offre plus la création d'une direction pour s'occuper vraiment de ces aires marines communautaires protégées. Et de là, il y a eu vraiment un changement de paradigme global dans la gestion de ces aires marines protégées, mais surtout la création de ces aires marines protégées, où l'État ne crée plus, l'État vient pour appuyer vraiment les initiatives communautaires. Et à ce jour, on est à 15 aires marines protégées avec deux processus de création qui sont en cours. Slide. Donc, voilà, donc comme je vous l'ai dit, hein, donc depuis que nous avons mis cette gouvernance en place, donc ça nous a permis de faire un bond de 600% donc au niveau de la création. Donc nous avons de 5 aires marines, on est à 15 aires marines protégées. Donc avec des superficies de 144 000, on est aujourd'hui à près de 600 000 hectares. Donc ce qui fait que sur la côte, donc la protection côtière, sur la façade côtière, le Sénégal est à 25% de la protection côtière, donc de ces zones marines côtières. Slide. Donc, ces cas-là, ça nous a permis de comprendre vraiment l'intérêt et l'importance de la combinaison avec les communautés. Donc, le fait de laisser les communautés gérer, d'appuyer leur gestion, ce qui nous a vraiment valu d'avoir ces résultats-là. Maintenant, pour mesurer ces résultats-là, pour comprendre ces résultats-là, on utilise aussi des outils, donc des outils LIMET, mais aussi surtout pour la résilience. Donc, nous utilisons le RSAT pour nous permettre d'évaluer vraiment la résilience de ces aires protégées. Slide. Donc, comme je vous l'ai dit, c'est des leçons apprises qui nous permettent aujourd'hui, vraiment, sur le plan développement socio-économique, dissémination des pratiques, donc, résolution des conflits, éducation environnementale, vraiment, nous avons vraiment fait de très bons résultats là-dedans. Slide. C'est ça que je vous disais tout à l'heure, le fait que l'État puisse aller avec les communautés. Les communautés n'ont pas la légalité, certes, pour appliquer cette légalité, mais les communautés ont la légitimité. Et le fait que l'État a réussi aujourd'hui à allier d'une manière très intelligente la légalité et la légitimité, ce qui nous a permis vraiment d'avoir, dans le processus de création, mais aussi dans les processus vraiment de gestion, ce qui nous a permis aujourd'hui de pouvoir vraiment gérer ces aires marines protégées avec des résultats. Et aujourd'hui, la majeure partie des pêches et tout ça, donc tout le monde reconnaît qu'aujourd'hui, les aires marines protégées ont un résultat extraordinaire parce qu'aujourd'hui, les 43% des espèces de pêche de poissons dans le Sénégal aujourd'hui sont concentrées dans les aires marines protégées. Merci. Voilà. Ça, comme je vous l'ai dit, aujourd'hui, ça nous a permis vraiment de travailler, donc d'appuyer, d'aider la gouvernance locale, surtout avec les organisations, les populations, pour renforcer leurs capacités. Et ce qui va nous permettre aujourd'hui, avec le rempart, avec l'utilisation des outils et puis l'océan gouvernance, donc GOPA, ça va nous permettre aujourd'hui de faire de la formation, donc des formateurs qui vont maintenant permettre l'utilisation concrète et correcte vraiment des outils, donc pour la résilience des populations. Donc, concernant ces aires marines protégées. Slide. Vraiment, je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. C'était juste ça que je voulais vous dire par rapport à partager avec vous. Et ça m'a fait un grand plaisir de comprendre un peu le mécanisme de fonctionnement des aires marines protégées, surtout en Croatie et dans d'autres contrées, surtout les Caraïbes aussi. Et ça nous permet, surtout avec leur école, de pouvoir faire vraiment des liens entre nos deux organisations, le MedPAN et le RAMPAO, pour nous permettre vraiment de pouvoir harmoniser ensemble nos différentes pratiques, mais tout en gardant notre diversité. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, colonel Sidibe. C'est un plaisir toujours compter avec votre contribution. Donc, on va continuer à travailler ensemble. Merci.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine pour continuer cette collaboration et peut-être mentionner que, en tout cas, il y a ce centre de formation en Tunisie, au Curiat, que pourrait être intéressant dans le futur que ce soit un centre conjoint de formation, MedPAN, RAMPAO, pourquoi pas, et peut-être d'autres sites de formation en Afrique de l'Ouest. Donc voilà, pas mal de discussions à avoir et d'idées ensemble.
Merci beaucoup.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.
Et merci beaucoup. So now we can invite Mrs. Maria Morgado from MPAN, the North American Network of Marine Protected Area. Hi, Maria.
Hello, merci. Thank you, everyone.
Hello.
So, well, as you said, my name is Maria Morgado, and I'm the Ecosystems Officer at the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. I work at the North America Regional Office based in Washington, D.C. And one of the important platforms that we help coordinate is the North American Marine Protected Areas Network, or NAMPAM, which is a virtual community of practice for marine protected areas managers across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. If we go to the next slide, we can see that NAMPAM is indeed a network of people and places. We really stress that. We work together for the protection of North America's shared coastal and marine ecosystems. It is a network of resource agencies, marine protected area managers, practitioners, and other experts from the 3 countries that I mentioned. And together there's over 1,000 MPAs in the region. The aim is to strengthen the conservation of biodiversity in critical marine habitats throughout the whole region. And we do this by connecting marine protected area managers for sharing information and good practice. As we will see, we also support the network to take a series of deep dives into specific region-wide challenges, such as climate change or ecological connectivity. And we also help manage the NAMPAN website. If you go there, it's nampan.org. You will see, for example, our new interactive story map of marine protected areas through North America and what it means for us. If we go to the next slide, please. It's important, I guess, to say who we are. We established NAMPAN at the request of the 3 governments of Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and with the support of the Regional Commission for Environmental Cooperation, the CEC. We recognize together that effective implementation of MPA networks requires transboundary cooperation and complementary conservation and actions at different management levels. So in response to this challenge, NAMPAN was created originally in 1999 under the umbrella of the CEC, through which the 3 countries collaborate to protect North America's environment. NAMPAN is supported by agencies from the 3 countries represented in a steering committee, which also includes UNEP and the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. The agencies mainly are Parks Canada, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Marine Protected Area Center in the United States, and the National Commission for Protected Natural Areas in Mexico. And together we work to achieve 3 main overall goals. 1, we want to increase collaboration to address these common challenges, as I said. Second, we also want to build partnerships for complementary and integrated conservation efforts. And third, we want to raise public awareness and appreciation of the value of North American MPAs. Next slide, please. We have a work plan that we update as needed every 6 months for 2 years. What we do, how we work on these overall goals that I was mentioning. So this work plan is structured around 3 main pillars. We connect, we convene, and we coordinate. What we mean by connect is we are providing a multilingual platform in English, French, and Spanish, where MPA practitioners get together as a virtual community of practice to facilitate collaboration. Under convene, what we do mainly, it's organizing what we call deep dives on critical issues that were identified together in regional consultations. And here we discuss these regional challenges across wide geographic areas. So the idea is, how can people across Canada, the United States, and Mexico, which are 3 huge areas and countries, how can they sit together? Well, we provide these platforms with the overall goal to find common approaches to these challenges that I was mentioning. And under coordinate, NAMPAN represents the network itself and the experiences of North American MPAs to other networks and in other venues, both domestically or internationally. And our main objective is to amplify our common message. If we go to the next slide, we can see some of the more specific actions that we've been doing lately. As I said, one of the main areas of work we're focusing on is what we call deep dives. We started this work after a series of consultations in the 3 countries. They started in 2019 and with the 3 countries together. So first we had individual consultations in each of the 3 countries, but then we put everyone in the same virtual room. And this was before COVID actually, so it was very innovative at the time, even though now we're using these tools everywhere. And in those consultations, we identified a series of topics where they could increase collaboration to address these common issues better, and at the same time identify opportunities, share information, and best practices. So with that objective in mind, we held the first deep dive in April 2021 around the theme of ecological connectivity. And we were exploring the need for the design of ecological corridors across the seascapes of the three countries. We decided after that deep dive to keep working on that topic. And now, for example, in November, at the end of November, we will have the third deep dive on ecological connectivity. And this time we're specifically looking at transboundary species at the coastal level. Together, we have developed, for example, a story map on this topic to show how human and ecological connectivity for MPAs is vital to conserve large areas distributed along a coast or in the ocean that have similar ecological communities or challenges. And again, you can go to our website, medpan.org, to see this story map. Another example of the work we do as a network is collaborating with other regional MPA networks, as everyone is learning in this workshop through the Ocean Governance Project, for example. Or, for example, we will also go together to participate as a network in Impact 5 next February. Next slide, please. And this is the last one. And this is key for us. I hope this has given you a quick overview of how we work, but the main ideas that I wanted to share are actually in this slide. One is that MPAs in Canada, Mexico, and the US benefit from trilateral cooperation, thanks to mainly having access to a network of practitioners facing similar challenges and having access to tools that are developed to address these gaps and case studies showcasing best practices for a wide range of ecosystems. In the future, we want to keep working to expand the reach of the network by increasing awareness and prioritizing inclusion, because we firmly believe that only if we can show everyone involved in MPA work, from managers to the communities in and around them, only if we can show them how we can support them as a network, only the network then will be successful. So this was a very quick overview, but you have my email in the next and final slide if you have any questions, and I really look forward to keep talking to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's a long time we are collaborating, and we have a lot to learn from each other network, and in the future, certainly to develop some training together, and maybe to mention that we are working a lot in the past on the policy aspect. And thanks you very much for your presentation. I guess we continue with the presentation, and then we can keep time for discussion. So I would like to invite Alexa Sapoznikov from the Patagonia Forum. She's online. Hello, Alexa.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, again.
Okay, well, I'm Alexa Sapoznikov. I'm from Argentina. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about our capacity building initiative that is called the School for the Management of MPA in the Southern Cone, towards a network of MPA managers. So next one, please. First of all, I would like to tell you about the network I'm representing that is leading this capacity building program. This is a different network from the ones that you have already presented. This is a network of NGOs, of non-governmental organizations, working as a regional network in south of Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and south of Brazil. And that area that you can see in the map is what we call the Patagonian Sea and areas of influence. And why we call all this area the Patagonian Sea? You won't find this name in any map. It's not an official map, but it's a whole ecosystem because there are oceanographic processes that belong to this area that give special characteristics to this area. And there are species that travel along all this area without taking care of any political borders. So in 2004, some of these organizations that are today members of this network thought that they should get together to exchange ideas, to encourage projects together, to be more effective in the conservation of this area. And to get together also think about ideas to influence governments so they can take care of this area, and we can all have a more healthy ocean, Patagonian Sea. So today we are 24 members, different NGOs, international, regional, local, some big, some small, but all together working on marine conservation in this region. One of our main objectives is to work with governments to create marine protected areas in this Patagonian Sea, and to better implement them. Other projects we are working on are related to plastic pollution in the ocean and to the oil exploration and exploitation in this area, which is something very new that we've been active in the last few years. So next one. And related to having well-implemented marine protected areas is the School for the Management of MPAs in the Southern Cone. This is a capacity building program that we launched in 2017. And since then, we have organized 3 courses oriented to strengthen competencies of 35 marine protected area managers from Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. These people were selected because of their positions in the government administrating MPAs. And the different courses we already organized were designed based on an analysis of these managers' needs. And so in one of the maps, you can see in blue points, the different MPAs we have reached through these MPA managers in the Southern Cone. But recently, we expanded this school to all the Atlantic area, not only the Southern Cone, working together with the Ocean Governance Project. So, and Puri have already said something about this in her presentation. We organized a course for 21 marine protected area managers working in different points in Latin America and Spain. You can see some of their areas in the other maps. So altogether in these years, we reached 25 different institutions, governmental and non-governmental, related to the MPA management in 11 countries. So by these courses, we're not only strengthening the managers' capacities, but also we are creating a network of managers, a community of practice that can share experiences and help each other once the course is over. So next one. And just for you to know, these courses were mainly virtual, but the ones that we have organized in the Southern Cone, they have also an in-person phase, which is crucial because when they live together for a week, for instance, we can visit an MPA, we can talk to each other in a different way than when we interact virtually. So it's really a very important part of the processes. But all the same with the Atlantic managers, the process has been really great, and we work only in Zoom. We hope one day we can meet all together, but it was a great experience as well. So now we have this community of practice where we get together all the managers that have participated in the different courses. And these are things that they say about this experience, that it is very significant for them to meet with other people working on MPAs in different regions of the world to develop a common vision on how to manage the marine environment in the Atlantic Ocean is very important because we are all connected. And if we really want to have a network of representative and well implemented MPAs, it's crucial for managers to have a common vision. Also learn new tools to improve their management, and learning from other countries' experiences is always inspiring. So next one. So after all these 5 years of working with managers, we understand that we are working towards this objective. Through the network of managers that we are facilitating, we are allowing them to get new knowledge, to learn experiences, to build a regional vision or a global vision, because now we are working at a higher scale, and also a long-term vision. And this is crucial to have strong MPA networks, representative, well-connected, and effective. So next one. So thank you for being there, and thank you, MedPAN, for inviting me to present this experience, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later.
Thank you very much, Alexa. Your experience in terms of training, capacity building is really great, and really what you have done. So recently you presented that involve managers from different parts of the world is really something interesting, and I hope we continue in this direction together. And now, so we can move to the presentation of Mr. Francis Top, from EU Ocean Governance Project and Blue Pangolin Consulting UK, about the Marine Mammal Management Toolkit, a tool for MPA managers and policymakers.
Thank you very much, Marie, Puri. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to present, I'm not a network per se, but after hearing a lot of the previous presentation, I think I could be considered as a network, even if it's a small network, because we have the same aim, is like to build capacity, to create community of practice, to share knowledge. So maybe I'm a little bit a network on marine mammals. So I'm going to skip this presentation, but Puri mentioned it earlier. It just so this project is done under the Ocean Governance Project, and I'm part of Component 2, and I'm managing the marine mammal twinning. So what are the main objectives of the marine mammal twinning? And it's where I save and I see a lot of similarities with some of the presentation. So there are 4 main objectives. One is to build technical capacity for MPA manager by sharing knowledge, expertise, and good practice. One is to provide MPA manager with a toolkit, and I will talk a little bit more about the toolkit later, so you will understand what I mean, to ensure a good management of marine mammals within their MPA. The third one is to create a network of peers trainers that could provide assistance to other MPA manager on an ad hoc basis. And the last one is to create like a network of users of the toolkit, or a community of users. No, this one. So the toolkit has 4 or 5 main components. So it was a toolkit was developed to assess, and I know like a lot of MPA managers don't really like the word assess, but it's to guide them to make sure, like, you know, when you've got marine mammals within your boundaries of your MPA, you can really make sure your management plan is integrated marine mammals. So there is the first part of the toolkit is called the fact sheet. For now, we have 23 fact sheets. It's a little document on specific topic, which are available with resource, useful information, case studies. They're gathered around 5 main themes, And one, for instance, is on addressing threats and activities. And under this, you've got entanglement. So they are very useful. The other one, which is like the most innovative part of this toolkit, is something called like the self-assessment tool. So it's an online or Excel file with a lot of different questions, and which allow you to assess how marine mammals are integrated into your toolkit, into your management plan. We're also just creating something called a community of practice, community of users. So it's for all of the users of the toolkit. It's to create a forum where they can share idea, problem, and issue on marine mammal management. And also something was mentioned a lot today is good practice. We're also gathering a lot of good practice. We are also trying to gather back practice. I know it sounds weird, but it's also good to learn from mistakes. So maybe we should present it in a different way, not call it bad practice, but I think it's also sometimes good to know, let's not try something that did not work. I think it's also good to document failure. So we have to find like a good word and maybe not call it bad practice. And after, it's also like a website where you've got like a newsletter, events, regular news. So if you want more information about the toolkit, there is like a flyer on the table, and you have the QR code on the little roll-up banner. So the purpose of the tool, it's a tool for multiple purposes. It's not only like to monitor your progress regarding marine mammal integration into your management plan. It can also be used as a checklist. It can also be used as a checklist for developing management plan. So for instance, like one of our partner like used the tool to make sure like when they're going to create their management plan, they don't forget anything about management of marine mammals. And it's also used, it's not developing, but for updating a management plan. Another partner like Stelwagen, a big sanctuary of the coast of Boston, they use the toolkit to update their management plan. It's very good also for the manager to understand their weakness and their success in their management plan. It also helps you to have an adaptive management. And another good comment we have, it's a lot of partners say it was a very good capacity building exercise with the team, because all the team is in a room and you try to think a little bit out of the box. So it was very useful to build capacity and to ask other questions. So as mentioned by Puri, the project started back in 2016. So it has been almost 6 years now. And since the beginning of the work of the project, we have been working with the same manager and same organization. And I think like after 5 or 6 years of work, and I'm sorry, I'm sure you have read this already, and you know it's not something new, but I think like the key message for managing migratory species, and I think this is really linked to the topic of network and collaboration. It's you need like cross-border collaboration. You need like exchange of technical and scientific data. You need some joint management measure. And I really like the last one, and I think again this session is really like addressing this last comment. It's we need to pull conservation initiative. We need to work together, and especially in the case of marine mammal. And I think I just have one last slide, which just an example of the role of the network. So this is basically like migratory corridor of the humpback whale where they breed and they reproduce. And I apologize for all the network I forgot, but if you put like the map of the network on top, you can see that if you link all the network, basically you're overlapping with the migratory corridor of the marine mammal. So I think it's a very good sign that, you know, again, like collaboration is needed between network and will help like to protect migratory species. And again, I apologize for the missing network. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. I really like this, the last slide with the overlap. So it makes sense and opens a huge door. Yeah.
And maybe we can also remind that you were participating in the last forum in Monaco with a specific work with Mediterranean MPA managers, and the toolkit also in this previous version was presented in the last MedPAN workshop in Kiaka, Turkey, 2019.
And since we're talking about presentation, and the previous speaker mentioned our training about management effectiveness, and thanks to Puri, we were able to organize a session just on the toolkit about a month ago. I think it was attended by over 25 MPA managers, so that was very useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can continue with the next and last presentation from Carol Ricci, Europark Federation, about the Life Enable project, about online capacity building for Natura 2000 managers. Hello, Carol.
Hello,
welcome.
I'm here, yes.
Hello.
Bonjour à tous, and hello to the people in Montenegro and to my fellow online participants. Thank you very much for inviting me, Millie and Puri, and I'm going to take a leap of faith and seek to share my screen, because I really need to manage my slides directly from here. You'll probably see why just in a moment. So thank you to all the previous speakers. You've pretty much said everything that I'm going to say, so I pretty much could go to the last slide now, but I'll take you through a journey of what I think networks and how we contribute to improving the management effectiveness of our marine protected areas. So if you just give me a second, oh, hold on a second, I just need to make sure I am on the right, yep, I am on the right presentation. Thank you very much. Okay, just give me a second whilst I make a start. So, management effectiveness. That is the sound of management effectiveness in marine protected areas. A healthy, resilient ecosystem. We were managing well the place, the coast, the landscape, the seabed, the geology, the ecology, the biodiversity, for planning and monitoring these places. But I think there might be something missing. Perhaps this is the sound of management effectiveness. It's people in that place. The people who live there, the people who visit there, the local communities, those who derive their business from the sea and from the coast. It requires good governance, good communication, engagement and consultation, and of course, sometimes compliance. Management effectiveness is of course about knowing our assets, our biological, our human, our tangible and our intangible assets. But I think it's more about what is driving those assets. What are the stressors on those assets? How are they changing? How can we adapt our policies, our processes to manage those assets more effectively in the most optimal way for people and for place? Because management effectiveness, I believe, is very much has three strands. It's about governance. It's about how we plan and manage an area and how we involve people in that through our stakeholder engagement processes. It's about monitoring, measuring, and of course, evaluating our assets. And I think the third and one of the most important strands that I've heard from previous speakers is, of course, capacity building. We need to make sure we have the skills and knowledge in order to undertake all of this work, as I said, in the optimal way. Because marine and coastal ecosystems are complex. But there's also a complex ecosystem of policy and management, of governance, that overlays that ecosystem that underpins us. And the great thing about ecosystems is everything is connected. And I think that needs to be and should be the same in our human ecosystem too. So what can help us navigate this complex natural and human ecosystem? Well, I hope I can offer a map and a compass to help us achieve better management effectiveness for biodiversity and for the livelihoods of people who rely on our protected areas, in and around our protected areas. That our management effectiveness does have good governance, has monitoring, measurement and evaluation, and indeed has capacity building. Now, where are we going to get that capacity building from? We need skills, we need knowledge, and I believe, as I've heard from previous speakers, a lot of that will come from networking. So let me just quickly introduce the Europark Federation, who I work for. The Europark Federation, we've been around for 50 years. It's our 50th anniversary next year, so I haven't been around for all 50 of them. It sometimes feels like that, but we are celebrating our 50 years anniversary next year. And we support parks to protect their nature. We promote sustainability, and we do all of that by bringing people together. We are that community of practice that we've already heard about. Now, we have about 400 members in almost 40 countries, and that is thousands of parks and protected areas. Now, we're not exclusively a marine protected area community, but of course we have marine protected areas within that. And I think we're very much able to bring members from other marine areas, the Baltic, the Atlantic, for example, to connect with those in the Mediterranean. What is it we do? Well, like most networks, we bring people together, as I said. We create programs that help, that derive from our members and that help them manage their areas better. Our sustainable tourism program, our transboundary program. We have a big program in youth and junior rangers. And of course, we have a number of projects that help us, move and progress and innovate new tools and guidance for our members. Of course, we do a lot of advocacy work with decision makers and policy makers. And I think importantly too, we celebrate the work of our parks and protected areas in order to make sure that people understand the value that they are to society. Now, I'm going to focus in on one particular project, and that is Life Enable. Oops, lost my nice sound that came with that. Hopefully it's coming. Our Life Enable project. Now, Life Enable project was built from previous projects, from again experience coming from our members about how they wanted to learn from each other, share each other's stories, and innovate new programs to help them manage their areas better. So our Life Enable project has been built on previous projects when, in the good old days when we created a manual, a paper manual on how to do things, and now, of course, we've gone almost completely online. It's 7 partners from 7 countries, of whom we are delighted to be working with MedPAN on this project. And one of the key aspects of the Life Enable project is to create the European Nature Academy for Applied Blended Learning. Now, our entire programme is built on competencies. It's a competency-based approach, creating peer-to-peer learning opportunities, learning experiences for professional development. What do we mean by a competency? Well, a competency is that combination of skills, of knowledge, and of attitude that will enable those working in protected areas to undertake what it is they do better. So we're really looking at how you do what you do. This is not a technical skills training capacity building approach. Some of that will come anyway. It's more about how you apply the skills and technicals you have in the complex world in which we're living. Again, much of this is based on the needs that came from our members. We developed a training needs analysis tool, an online training needs analysis tool, which enables individuals to assess their own training needs, as well as teams to assess the needs that they have in order to fulfill their objectives in their protected areas. Now, all protected areas and marine protected areas do operate within a network of protected areas, whether that be a regional or a national level, or indeed as a global level, as we've just been discovering. But of course, they also work at an individual site level in their own protected area. And you can see here the many different things that we all need to do in those protected areas, from management planning right through to site monitoring and reporting. And there are many overlapping responsibilities by people who work in these protected areas at different levels within the organisation. But everybody needs core competency in order to deliver the functions for which they are responsible. And that's really what we're focusing on through our online learning academy. These are just some of the things that we all need in order to undertake our functions better. We need to be communicators. We need to learn how to collaborate and work in partnership and cooperate with others. We need to be inclusive. We need to provide education, integrate what we're doing across a range of agenda, as well as develop projects that help us deliver all of those different things. Now, that all takes a range of different skills, different knowledges, and different attitudes about how we present those. So everything from protected area policy, planning and management, organisational leadership and development, communications and collaboration, local community and cultures, tourism, recreation and public use, awareness and education, best use of technology, and our own personal competencies. And these are all the things that we have included in our Life Enable project, and which will become part of our new European nature. So have your mobile phones ready, because I'm about to give you a QR code if there's something you want to download. So I'm just giving you a little bit of advance warning on that. It's coming up just in a moment. So the European Nature Academy, as I said, is a really important pillar of our Life Enable project. It's going to create blended learning courses. As you've heard from others about the move online, we, like others, moved online long before we needed to in terms of the COVID restrictions. But we're moving back into a blended learning situation where we have online learning, but also face-to-face workshops as part of that. There will be tailor-made structured courses dealing with some of the competencies that I've mentioned, as well as more thematic topics as well. So there would be a basic level, which is just looking at some generic competencies. Foundation level, really going into some details, particularly on marine protected areas and forest protected areas. And a higher practitioner level, where we will be delivering a train the trainer program for people to go on and deliver these courses and deliver this work in their own areas, downstream of the academy itself. What does that look like? Well, you know, I'm not going to go into this great detail, but there you see is an overview of what the European Nature Academy is going to deliver. There's those core competency courses, which we believe to be compulsory for everyone. Those are the basic things that you need to be able to do. Well, I say basic, they're actually quite advanced things that you need to be able to do in order to fulfill any of your other work. Any of your technical work still needs good communication, good stakeholder engagement, and competent, inclusive communications. Then we move on to the more sectorial areas of learning. As I said here, there will be a specific course for marine protected area managers, as well as forest managers as well. There are some optional courses that we're developing on sustainable tourism, on involving youth, and other sort of project development ideas. And of course, as I mentioned, the Train the Trainer course itself. We would hope that the guidelines for best practice, MedPAN's guidelines for best practice, will, I'm sure, feature in this. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel here. And I would be delighted to link to many of the other capacity building resources that have already been mentioned. So the European Nature Academy is now open. It literally is open for registrations and applications now, the QR code up. You've still got a week or so to go. Closes on the 4th of November. So we are looking for 60 participants, 60 free places, because obviously this is a European funded programme, which is very much testing and modelling this European Nature Academy. And as I say, the first 60 places need to be taken up now to start the courses in February of next year. So if you're interested in taking part in our being part of the courses in the European Nature Academy, I strongly suggest that you take a note of the registration and or flash up on the QR code there, or just contact us in Europart and we will make sure you get a registration form and apply now. Oh, maybe we need to add something new to our soundscape in marine protected areas. And that is obviously building. Hopefully that's the sound of management effectiveness actually happening, where we're bringing people in place together, where we're investing in our networking, we're harnessing the skills that are out there through learning and sharing together. We're upskilling people with competencies and attitudes in peer learning experiences that will help us develop our governance, our planning, our administration, our stakeholder engagement, that we'll be able to design and develop effective and efficient monitoring and evaluation systems, and that will take part in capacity building experience that will ensure and enable our marine protected areas to be effectively managed and deliver healthy and resilient landscapes, seascapes, and of course, soundscapes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol, and thank you for being here as we changed the session. I know it was difficult for you, and thank you very much to make it. And thanks to all the sounds, the image, it's really dynamic from here. Thank you. So now we have some minutes for some questions, comments. Yes, Yanis, you want? And the mic, yeah. Thank you. And also participant online, don't hesitate to raise hands.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very enlightening series of presentations.
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Luis from Cyprus Marine and Maritime Institute. So my question is, and forgive my ignorance, it's a very impressive feat to manage to get a network of 13 networks. However, I noticed that there's still lots of regions of the world missing. Is there a reason for that? Is it because there are no networks in those regions, or perhaps could one effort be made in order to create networks in other regions, or just bring them in and become, let's say, a global network instead of just one global network of MPAs?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. In fact, there are two factors. In some regions, there are no networks, and in other regions, we didn't identify the networks that are there because we didn't do a specific research going to find what exists everywhere. So we identified those that are more, let's say, more relevant or more active internationally or in the regions where we are operating. But I know that, for instance, there are networks of locally managed protected areas in Africa. When we were at the Africa Parks Congress last summer, we identified a few of them. We identified also the wish of creating networks in the Central Africa region, but that they are not existing, but there are a number of managers that they are thinking on doing it. So we will be also in contact with them. They are locally managed networks of locally managed areas in also in the Pacific, a substantial number. With some of them, we are starting now the contact, but they are just at the beginning. So this is, let's say, a recent idea, not because this idea is too new, it's because to go ahead on connecting people, you need to have resources. And normally, for instance, MedPAN, we love to do this, but MedPAN operates in the Mediterranean, CAMPAM operates in the Caribbean, NAMPAM in North America. So everyone has limited resources and a very designated region to operate, or country. So normally to connect people outside your area of operation requires a lot of time and resources. So the Ocean Governance Project allows to have at least, in this case, me coordinating this part of the activity. And since we had the connections with a number of networks in the Atlantic, now it's easy to add all new ones. And when some of our networks attend a meeting and they told, okay, we have this partnership, and other networks just ask, can we also join? So if you exist, you attract people. If you don't exist, you attract nothing. So it's like a permanent positive feedback. But obviously, a minimum of resources are needed, otherwise it's difficult. But regarding the point of creating new networks, I think is necessary, but I think networks cannot be created with a top-down approach. So what we can do is just to show that this is a model that works well in many countries, in many regions, and this can motivate people in their own context to establish the networks. And then maybe we can help from our experience, but we cannot go now, for instance, through this easy and say, okay, guys, you must organize a network because it's what you need. No, that's not the way. You need to really motivate the people, but allow them to do in their own way, because behind every network, there is a lot of cultural perspectives that are very different. And the context is not the same. A network that has an association structure like MedPAN, that a network that is connected to a regional CIS convention, that a network that depends on a government. So the governance models, as it was presented by Charles Besançon, is one of the key elements, but it's there's a diversity of options. So all this is in the basis, but I think it's nice the progress we are making in identifying what are the key elements for a network being effective, because nobody did in the past. So in these terms, what we are doing is innovative, but again, we need to support people on the ground. That doesn't make any sense from far away to say that they have to organize a network. Thank you.
Merci, je me présente, je m'appelle Mohamed Ouajdi Haïdi, je suis adjoint au maire de la ville de Sfax, membre aussi du conseil politique de la CGLU, droit à la ville et territoire inclusif. Je suis aussi membre du Task Force Climat CGLUA. Je me pose toujours la question, beaucoup d'actions dans les territoires pour conserver l'environnement maritime. Je voudrais savoir de notre ami du Sénégal, je crois, et aussi bien de l'intervenant dans la salle, quel est le rôle des collectivités, parce que toutes ces actions se passent sur le territoire. Quelle est l'implication des municipalités? Est-ce qu'ils soutiennent ces actions-là? Est-ce qu'ils sont présents? Ma ville est engagée dans un nouveau projet en Cerse et je suis heureux d'être avec vous parce que c'est le plus peut-être important engagement qu'on a eu pour s'impliquer sur l'environnement maritime et les aires maritimes protégées parce qu'on n'a pas de compétences, on n'a pas les moyens, mais on est engagé franchement dans cette thématique-là. J'aime bien connaître de l'expérience du Sénégal et aussi bien de la présentation qu'on a entendue ici. Est-ce que les villes, les municipalités sont impliquées? Est-ce qu'ils aident au bon peut-être exercice de ces actions ou ils sont peut-être plus ou moins ils surveillent et voient ces actions? Tout simplement.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour cette question. Et en effet, les collectivités locales, c'est vraiment un échelon intéressant. Et en fait, il faut voir que même dans le réseau MedPAN, par exemple, on a beaucoup de membres qui sont des collectivités parce que ce sont des collectivités qui ont la gestion des aires marines protégées. Je pense par exemple en Italie, même en France. Et donc déjà, sont membres directement. Ensuite, c'est vrai que le territoire collectivité locale, les villes, même ça dépend après selon les pays, mais en tout cas les villes dans partout, c'est vraiment des acteurs très intéressants parce que ça permet de travailler vraiment sur les questions de planification du territoire, de gestion intégrée. Et donc, on est actuellement impliqué dans un projet, d'ailleurs avec la ville de Sfax, et ça, je pense que c'est intéressant de le mentionner, avec le réseau des villes méditerranéennes, MedCities, un projet européen qui permet de travailler sur des sites non européens, qui s'appelle NCRS. C'est un projet qui se finira l'année prochaine. Et vraiment, pour nous, c'est un très bon point. Parce que, et d'ailleurs, au Forum des aires marines protégées de Méditerranée de l'année dernière à Monaco, on avait une session vraiment pour revoir comment on peut se connecter entre le réseau de gestionnaires d'aires marines protégées, avec certaines villes qui sont déjà impliquées dedans parce qu'elles ont une mission de gestion des aires marines protégées. Et puis aussi ce réseau des villes. Et puis, un autre point aussi, c'est qu'au niveau MedPAN, on a fait une étude par rapport à notre base de données. On a lancé un questionnaire à toutes les aires marines protégées avec qui on est en contact en Méditerranée sur les questions de gouvernance. Et ce qu'on voit, effectivement, c'est que dans beaucoup de sites, beaucoup d'aires marines protégées, dans les organes de gouvernance des aires marines protégées, les villes ont vraiment une place importante. Voilà, et donc je pense que c'est quelque chose en tout cas, il faut absolument qu'on continue. Bon, là, je parle pour MedPAN, mais je ne sais pas si les collègues d'autres réseaux veulent témoigner un petit peu sur la place des collectivités locales, des villes. Ah oui, je crois qu'il est parti. Ah, il est parti.
Mais je peux vous répondre brièvement par rapport à ma petite expérience de visite au Sénégal avec le colonel Sidibé. Et ce que je vis dans les AMP de gestion communautaire, c'est vraiment une implication de la population locale, ce qui veut dire toutes les structures de la ville ou de petits villages, ils sont très engagés à la gestion de ces sites. Et bon, avec lui, on a visité un espace qui avait été récupérer, restaurer toute la mangrove avec une implication locale incroyable. C'était fait tout par les gens du village. Et donc, je pense vraiment que le modèle au Sénégal, c'est un modèle très intéressant. Et moi, j'aimerais bien qu'on s'inspire un petit peu ça parce que souvent, en Méditerranée, notamment dans les pays développés, on attend que ce soit l'administration publique qui fait tout et on n'anime pas beaucoup la population à être active. Et je pense que là, il y a des choses très intéressantes à apprendre d'autres pays, dans le cas du Sénégal, parce que ce n'est pas une exception dans un village, ça peut arriver partout. C'est déjà toute une série d'aires marines protégées qui sont gérées avec cette approche. Et c'est vachement intéressant. Oui, bien sûr.
Merci, je vais vous répondre sans vous répondre, désolé. Mais alors, d'une part, je vous encourage à aller en discuter avec notre collègue Jean-Jacques Goussard, donc qui est responsable du training sur la résilience. Et donc la résilience, l'approche prospective, en fait, il vous dira que les communautés ou les villes ont un rôle à jouer, et peut-être pas seulement dans la gestion, mais justement dans la mise en place d'aires marines protégées, parce qu'ils sont au courant des projets immobiliers, ils sont au courant de tout ça. Donc c'est un partenaire très important qu'il faut, je pense, impliquer dès le départ pour s'assurer que l'aire marine protégée future répondent à toutes les attentes. Donc je peux vous le présenter, Jean-Jacques, à la fin de la séance. Merci.
Oui, d'ailleurs, on peut préciser que vendredi, si vous êtes encore là, donc il y a la formation sur cet outil résilience avec Jean-Jacques Goussard. Et c'est une session ouverte, donc vous êtes invités à participer. C'est ici. Any other question also from people online? In any case, thank you very much. I think it's really interesting. We will continue this mobilization, and yeah, and then now we can maybe invite Carol Martinez for the recommendation.
Par rapport à ce dernier commentaire de mon collègue Francis sur la résilience, je pense que c'est un très bon exemple parce que c'est un point d'entrée que les gens comprennent bien. Si tu parles d'air marine protégée, conservation de la nature, l'écosystème, mais ils ne perçoivent pas comment ça les implique directement. Parfois, on a du mal à passer le message. Par contre, quand on parle de la résilience côtière, c'est la continuité du village, de la ville, des gens, d'activités économiques. Donc, c'est une chose qu'on voit. Moi, je vois maintenant dans la côte méditerranée occidentale, on a beaucoup de problèmes d'érosion côtière et des villes qui, pendant des années, ne faisaient pas attention, qui bâtissaient n'importe quoi sur la sable. Maintenant, ils sont très inquiets. Ils pensent à comment gérer tout ça. Donc, c'est un élément qui peut nous faire très bien les liens pour animer les gens à protéger les écosystèmes et établir des aires marines protégées.
So maybe on this last but very important point, as you remember, my colleague Pierre indicated that this workshop has been set up and developed on the basis of our roadmap. And there is actually a recommendation, a key recommendation of the post-2020 roadmap dedicated to networks. And what we would like to do with you is to see if there is any missing activities or strategic orientation in terms of networks and developments of networking activities, so that we can fine-tune our approach and the development of our activities. So I won't read all the detail of what is as well in the policy paper, but the main points was actually to spot the light on the fact that we should not reinvent the wheel, and we should rather connect with other existing networks, and even networks that are not directly, I would say, anchored into MPAs, but that are dealing with marine conservation, such as the UN Local 2030 network. And actually, it makes a bridge with your comments, because it's bring together municipalities and subnational bodies that are dealing with the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. So this is what we have highlighted as key activities and recommendation. And it would be great to hear from you and to have your insight, your tips to see what kind of activities or further development we could deploy to really foster these networks and to support their effectiveness according to what we heard today. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi again. Yeah. Again, I don't know if it's there because I didn't get the chance to read everything, but I think apart from what was mentioned about the global network and of course the regional networks, perhaps sub-regional networks of, for example, I give you an example. I come from Cyprus, so in the far eastern part of the Mediterranean, we have specific problems that perhaps are slowly going to be coming to the West, for example, invasive species in MPAs. So we have specific problems, and it would be nice if we could communicate them together on a sub-regional level, because they are there now and they need, or the MPA managers need to act upon. And perhaps some MPAs or some countries, some areas they already know, or they have tried some solutions, and they can, do a transferability of all this knowledge gained. So maybe it's too much, but perhaps it's
no, absolutely. And maybe we didn't mention, you're right, maybe during the session we didn't mention this sub-regional level, but it's in our planning. In fact, MedPAN is already operating with this approach, supporting AdrianPAN, which includes the Adriatic and Ionian Sea. And if there is interest in other sub-regions in the Mediterranean in going ahead to establish a sub-regional network or a working group sub-regional in the context of MedPAN. So there is not a single option for things. So I think, from MedPAN, we will be glad to support this, because we fully understand that there are specificities that don't reach the whole Mediterranean. They are just sub-regional, but they are really necessary. So this, we include this, and we will be talking more on this. I don't know if you were at the General Assembly of MedPAN on Monday. So for the newest strategy, this is one of the dimensions that we start working recently with, supporting this national dimension, continue with the sub-regional that exists, such the one in the Adriatic, but we want to really strengthen this multiple level, because it's the only way to address different topics at the right level for good action.
Yeah, and also to mention that, as Puri said, we support this AdriaPAN or AdrianPAN now evolution, the Adriatic and Ionian Sea sub-regional network. And as always, it's important, the bottom-up approach. I mean, MedPAN, we are here to support, but always need a core group of people that are really committed and really want to make this moving. And then MedPAN, we can really support, share our experience. And just to mention that we will start soon the JEF project. There is a whole component of this JEF to support new national network or an existing one, and sub-regional network as well. And there are people from North Africa that are really asking us to start supporting a North African network of MPA managers. Why not in the eastern part? So I invite you maybe to check with some, and we can discuss later also, check with maybe if there is a core group of people that are willing to start something. And as Puri said, could be different format. I was speaking about the Pelagos. It's not for now a network of MPA managers, but it's kind of network of stakeholders in this Pelagos area.
Yeah. Just I think something I would like to stress there are networks and there are networking activities, and sometimes the frontier, the border is not clear. Sometimes they are very different, but I think that what we have to be is very adaptive and flexible. That's what nature shows us, that the solutions are always very diverse. So we need to adapt to each context, and from each context, help the things to evolve. So I really like to hear from CAMPAM that now that they are putting different options to consolidate this network. That is the first one that exists, as far as I know, in terms of networks of managers. But now there are other challenges, so maybe additional changes are needed. But we can start working in many different levels. Sometimes we tend to be very strict and structural and want to have the structure from the very beginning. MedPAN was not born this way. MedPAN was born in the context of a World Bank project, allowing managers to connect, to exchange. And then there was another project years later, an Interreg, that continued promoting those exchanges. And just after this several experiences of networking, they decided they want to have a permanent network and create MedPAN Association as it is today. But I'm telling this because sometimes people say, oh, this is so difficult to create an area. Okay, maybe you don't need to create. You are in MedPAN, you propose to organize a working group to networking specifically in the Eastern Mediterranean. Maybe the beginning, and maybe later you can evolve or not, if it is enough. But I think it's important to keep it easy, not to think in complicated things, because then we are afraid of failing. We are afraid of not having enough time, not enough resources. Take advantage on what exists. I think this is the basis also of nature, being effective and efficient.
The last intervention, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I also like to highlight as well as the UNEP Secretariat is doing this assessment of implementation of recommendations for campaign reactivation. There is a simultaneous effort trying to agree on ways to increase connectivity at sub-regional level. So because keeping in mind that perhaps at sub-regional level, there are more similar on culture, on genetics, and hydrodynamics and the ecosystem itself, it creates a way for campaign be at the center of this connectivity at sub-regional level too. So it is integrating everything. Once on one side, campaign likes to reactivate, on the other side is considering its role on implementing and highlighting the need for higher connectivity at sub-regional level. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marta. I think you mentioned, it's not the first time it's mentioned, it was another presentation, but you stress the word connectivity. And it's very interesting because in the meeting we had in Kota Kinabalu 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting of the partners of the twinning before this learning exchange. And this element of ecological connectivity linked to the human connectivity was really identified as something that might guide us to establish new connections and looking at the different levels in which we can operate to really strengthen the ecological connectivity at the same time we work together. So what you say, it really responds to this biological dimension, ecological dimension of where ecological processes are happening, and how important is that the managers that operate on this space may exchange and may work together, because the impact may be much higher if we do actions coordinatedly. So, and here, taking this migratory or mobile species as a clear indicator and a clear objective for our action may help a lot. So, yeah, again, the map that Francis showed with this overlapping, I think it's very illustrative of this, and it stresses the need for us to think strategically under this approach, with all the other things we mentioned, of course. But this is something that is important to be put in the center of our new strategies. This ecological connectivity and these dimensions: regional, sub-regional, national, and global.
So thanks to all of you, thanks to speaker and participant online and in the room. So just arrived Jean-Jacques Goussard, so this is the one.
The one that was tapping, you heard the computer that was tapping.
Yeah. We were announcing the training on resilience. Some friends from the SFAC city would be interested maybe. And so just a logistic note. So we have now 30 minutes to change and for people in Montenegro, of course. And we meet at 6 in front of the Palace Hotel to go to the boat. Again, boat trip, but different one than this morning. And so all of you are welcome. And thanks very much for this very interesting session. Bye.